The morning sun cast long shadows across the stone corridors of Windsor Castle as James Mitchell adjusted his crisp red uniform. He had been serving as a royal guard for 15 years, but today felt different somehow. The castle buzzed with unusual energy as staff prepared for Queen Camilla's upcoming charity gala, where she would wear one of her most treasured gowns. James walked his regular patrol route, his polished boots echoing against the ancient floors. The castle held countless secrets within its walls, stories whispered through generations of servants and guards. He had heard them all, or so he thought. Today would prove him wrong in the most extraordinary way possible. As he rounded the corner near the Queen's private chambers, James noticed something odd. The door to Queen Camilla's wardrobe room stood slightly ajar, which was highly unusual. Palace protocol demanded that all royal chambers remain securely locked when unattended. His training kicked in immediately, and he approached with caution. The wardrobe room was enormous, filled with hundreds of designer gowns, ceremonial robes, and precious jewelry collections. Soft lighting illuminated the carefully organized space where each item held its designated place. James had been inside this room countless times during security checks, but he had never paid close attention to its contents. Something caught his eye in the far corner of the room. Behind a collection of evening gowns, he noticed an unusual shimmer of gold fabric that seemed out of place. The material appeared older than the surrounding garments, with intricate embroidery that looked different from modern royal attire. His curiosity grew stronger as he moved closer to investigate. James carefully pushed aside the contemporary dresses to get a better look. What he discovered made his breath catch in his throat. Hidden behind the modern collection was an ancient wardrobe section he had never noticed before. The wooden panels were darker, carved with symbols and patterns that spoke of centuries past. Inside this hidden section hung a magnificent robe, unlike anything he had ever seen. The golden fabric seemed to glow with its own light, covered in jewels and embroidery that told stories of royal history. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, far superior to even the finest modern royal garments. James realized he was looking at something truly special, something that didn't belong in Queen Camilla's contemporary collection. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out to touch the fabric. The material felt ancient yet perfectly preserved, as if time had stopped within this hidden corner of the wardrobe. The weight of the robe suggested it was made from the finest materials available, with gold thread woven throughout the intricate patterns. James stepped back, his mind racing with questions. How had this magnificent robe remained hidden for so long? Why was it concealed behind the modern collection? Most importantly, whose robe was this, and why did it seem so familiar? He had studied royal history during his guard training, and something about this particular garment stirred memories of old photographs and historical documents. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside made James realize he needed to act quickly. He couldn't simply ignore what he had found, but he also couldn't risk being discovered in the Queen's private wardrobe without proper authorization. His duty as a royal guard demanded that he investigate any unusual discoveries within the palace walls. James carefully documented the robe's location in his mind. Noting every detail of its appearance and position, the golden fabric bore markings and symbols that seemed to tell a story. Though he couldn't immediately decipher their meaning, he noticed a small tag attached to the robe's interior, but the writing was too faded to read clearly in the dim lighting. As he prepared to leave the wardrobe room, James felt the weight of his discovery settling upon his shoulders. This wasn't just any piece of clothing. This was something significant, something that had been deliberately hidden away from public view. His instincts told him that this robe held secrets that could change everything the royal family thought they knew about their own history. The approaching footsteps grew louder, forcing James to make a quick decision. He carefully repositioned the modern dresses to conceal the hidden section once again, ensuring that everything appeared exactly as he had found it. His discovery would remain secret until he could determine the proper course of action. James slipped out of the wardrobe room and resumed his patrol, but his mind remained fixed on the magnificent robe hidden behind Queen Camilla's contemporary collection. He knew that this discovery would haunt him until he could uncover the truth about its origins and significance. The golden fabric and intricate embroidery had awakened something within him, a burning curiosity that demanded answers. That evening, as James completed his shift and returned to his quarters, He couldn't shake the image of the mysterious robe from his mind. He pulled out his laptop and began searching through online archives of royal history, looking for any clues that might help him identify what he had found. Hours passed as he scrolled through photographs and historical documents, but nothing seemed to match the unique design and craftsmanship of the hidden robe. Sleep eluded James that night as he lay in bed, replaying every detail of his discovery. Tomorrow he would need to decide whether to report his finding through official channels or investigate further on his own. Either choice carried risks, but he knew he couldn't simply pretend he had never seen the magnificent robe hidden in the depths of Queen Camilla's wardrobe. Margaret's words hung in the air like a challenge, and James realized he was standing at a crossroads. The elderly dresser's knowing expression told him that his secret was no longer his alone. He had to make a choice about how to proceed, and that choice could change everything. "Mrs. Thompson," James said carefully, "I'm not sure I understand what you mean." Margaret smiled softly and closed the wardrobe room door behind her. "James, I've been working in this castle for 31 years. I've seen guards come and go, and I've learned to recognize when someone has stumbled upon something they weren't meant to find." James felt his stomach tighten. "I was only conducting a security check. Behind Queen Camilla's evening gowns." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "The same area where you were looking yesterday when you thought no one was watching?" The game was up. James realized that Margaret had been observing him more closely than he had imagined. Palace staff were trained to notice unusual behavior, and his repeated interest in that particular section of the wardrobe had not gone unnoticed. "You know about the robe," James said. "It wasn't a question." Margaret nodded slowly. "I've known about it for 20 years. I was the one who helped hide it there." This revelation hit James like a thunderbolt. "You, but why? The historical records say it was lost during routine cleaning." Margaret moved deeper into the wardrobe room and gestured for James to follow. "The official story was necessary to protect the truth. Come, let me show you what you've really found." With practiced movements, Margaret pushed aside the contemporary dresses to reveal the hidden section. In the better lighting of the main wardrobe area, the magnificent coronation robe appeared even more spectacular than James had remembered. The golden fabric seemed to capture and reflect every ray of light, creating an almost magical glow. "This is Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe from 1953, Margaret explained, her voice filled with reverence. "But it's not just any coronation robe. This is the one she wore during the most sacred part of the ceremony, the actual moment of crowning." James stared at the garment with new understanding. Why was it hidden? Why not display it or keep it in the royal collection? Margaret's expression grew serious. "Because someone tried to steal it. 20 years ago, we discovered that one of the cleaning staff was working with outside criminals to remove valuable items from the castle. They had targeted this robe specifically because of its immense historical and monetary value." "So you hid it to protect it?" "Queen Elizabeth II herself made the decision," Margaret continued. "She felt that the robe was too precious to risk losing forever. Rather than move it to an external vault where it might still be vulnerable, she chose to hide it within the castle itself." James was amazed by this revelation. But why in Queen Camilla's wardrobe? Wouldn't that seem like an obvious place to look? Margaret smiled at his naivety. "Think about it, James. This wardrobe room is one of the most secure locations in the entire castle. It's constantly monitored, regularly occupied by trusted staff, and protected by layers of security protocols. Who would think to look for a missing historical artifact among contemporary royal fashion?" The logic was brilliant in its simplicity. The coronation robe had been hidden in plain sight, protected by the daily activities of royal life. Margaret's presence in the wardrobe room provided an additional layer of security, as she could monitor the hidden section without arousing suspicion. "Who else knows about this?" James asked. "Very few people. Queen Elizabeth II, myself, the head of palace security at the time, and now you." Margaret paused thoughtfully. "The question is, what do we do now that you've discovered it?" James felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was now part of a secret that had been carefully maintained for 2 decades. The knowledge brought both privilege and burden. "Does Queen Camilla know?" he asked. Margaret shook her head. Queen Elizabeth II decided that the fewer people who knew, the safer the robe would be. She felt that Queen Camilla should be protected from the knowledge until the time was right. When would the time be right? "That's what we need to figure out," Margaret said. The original threat has long since passed. The criminals involved were caught and imprisoned years ago, but Queen Elizabeth II never had the chance to retrieve the robe before her passing. James realized they were facing a delicate situation. The robe represented an important piece of royal history that rightfully belonged in the official collection, but it had been hidden for valid security reasons. Now they had to decide whether to maintain the secret or reveal the truth. "What do you think we should do?" James asked Margaret, recognizing her experience and wisdom in palace matters. Margaret was quiet for several moments, studying the magnificent robe. "I think," she said finally, "that Queen Elizabeth II would want this robe to serve its proper purpose again. She loved history and understood the importance of preserving royal traditions for future generations. You think we should tell Queen Camilla?" "I think we should tell Queen Camilla, but we need to do it carefully and respectfully. This robe represents her mother-in-law's legacy, and she deserves to know the full story." James nodded, understanding the delicate nature of their situation. They weren't just dealing with a missing artifact. They were dealing with family history, royal protocol, and the memory of beloved Queen Elizabeth II. "How do we approach her?" James asked. Margaret smiled. "Leave that to me. I've been dressing royals for 3 decades, and I know how to handle sensitive conversations. But first, we need to document everything properly." Over the next hour, Margaret shared more details about the robe's history and the circumstances surrounding its concealment. She showed James hidden documentation that proved the robe's authenticity and explained the security measures that had been put in place to protect it. James learned that the robe had been checked regularly over the years to ensure its preservation. Margaret had maintained it carefully, treating it with the same respect and attention she gave to all royal garments. The fabric remained in perfect condition, a testament to both its quality and Margaret's expert care. As evening approached, James realized that his accidental discovery had opened a door to an extraordinary chapter of royal history. Tomorrow they would begin the process of returning Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe to its rightful place in the royal collection. But tonight, James felt the privilege of being trusted with one of the palace's most carefully guarded secrets. The magnificent robe hanging before him represented not just royal history, but the dedication and loyalty of people like Margaret, who had risked their careers to protect something precious. The next morning brought no relief to James's restless mind. He arrived at the castle earlier than usual, hoping to catch another glimpse of the mysterious robe before his official duties began. The corridors were quieter at this hour, with only essential staff moving about their morning routines. James made his way toward Queen Camilla's chambers, but found his path blocked by Margaret Thompson, the Queen's personal dresser. Margaret had worked for the royal family for over 30 years and knew every item in the Queen's extensive wardrobe collection. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and she guarded the Queen's privacy with fierce dedication. "Good morning, James," Margaret said with a polite but questioning smile. "You're here quite early today. Is everything all right with security?" James felt his heart rate increase, but he maintained his professional composure. "Just conducting some additional security checks, Mrs. Thompson. Nothing to worry about." Margaret nodded but continued to study his face with the keen intuition that came from decades of palace service. "I'll be working in the Queen's wardrobe room this morning, preparing her gown for tonight's charity event. Perhaps you could conduct your security check later." "Of course," James replied, though disappointment flooded through him. "I'll return this afternoon." As Margaret disappeared into the wardrobe room, James realized he needed a different approach. He couldn't simply return to the hidden robe without arousing suspicion. Instead, he decided to research the castle's history more thoroughly, hoping to find clues about when and why such a magnificent garment might have been concealed. James spent his lunch break in the castle's library, a vast room filled with centuries of royal documents and historical records. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Davies, had worked at the castle for almost as long as Margaret and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of royal history. "I'm researching some historical aspects of castle security," James explained to Mrs. Davies. "Could you help me find information about significant royal garments or ceremonial robes?" Mrs. Davies's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "Oh, my royal ceremonial dress is one of my favorite subjects. Are you looking for anything specific?" James chose his words carefully. "I'm particularly interested in coronation robes and their historical significance." Have there been any famous robes that went missing or were lost over the years? Mrs. Davies paused thoughtfully, then moved toward a section of leather-bound volumes. There is one particularly interesting case, she said, pulling out a thick book. Queen Elizabeth II's original coronation robe from 1953 disappeared mysteriously about 20 years ago. James felt his pulse quicken. Disappeared? How does a coronation robe just disappear? It's quite a mystery, Mrs. Davies continued, opening the book to a page filled with photographs. The robe was incredibly valuable, not just monetarily but historically. It was made from the finest materials and took months to create. The embroidery alone was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. James stared at the black and white photographs showing Queen Elizabeth II wearing a magnificent golden robe covered in intricate embroidery. The design looked remarkably similar to what he had glimpsed in Queen Camilla's wardrobe, though he couldn't be certain from the old photographs. What happened when it disappeared? James asked, trying to keep his voice casual. The official report stated that it was lost during a routine cleaning and storage process, Mrs. Davies explained, but many staff members believed there was more to the story. Some thought it might have been deliberately hidden to protect it from potential theft or damage. Mrs. Davies turned the page to reveal more detailed photographs of the robe's embroidery. James studied every pattern and symbol, committing them to memory. The similarities to what he had seen were too striking to be coincidental. Were there any theories about where it might have been hidden? James pressed gently. Oh yes, many theories, Mrs. Davies laughed. Some believed it was moved to a secure vault. Others thought it might have been hidden within the castle itself. There were even rumors that certain staff members knew its location but were sworn to secrecy. James spent the rest of his break studying the photographs and reading detailed descriptions of the missing coronation robe. Every detail seemed to match his memory of the hidden garment. The golden fabric, the intricate embroidery, even the overall design appeared identical. As afternoon approached, James returned to his duties with new determination. He needed to get another look at the hidden robe to confirm his suspicions, but Margaret's presence in the wardrobe room made that impossible. He would have to wait for the right opportunity. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Around 3 o'clock, James overheard Margaret talking to another staff member about needing to visit the laundry department to check on Queen Camilla's gown for the evening event. This would give him a brief window to return to the wardrobe room. James waited until Margaret disappeared down the corridor, then quickly made his way to the Queen's chambers. His hands shook slightly as he opened the wardrobe room door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of expensive perfumes and fine fabrics greeted him as he moved toward the hidden section. This time, James came prepared with a small flashlight to examine the robe more closely. He carefully moved aside the contemporary dresses and illuminated the magnificent garment. His suspicions were confirmed immediately. This was undoubtedly Queen Elizabeth II's missing coronation robe. The golden fabric shimmered in the flashlight beam, revealing details that matched perfectly with the historical photographs. James could see the same intricate patterns, the same royal symbols, even the same placement of precious stones and gold thread. After 20 years, the late Queen's coronation robe had been found. James examined the small tag he had noticed during his first visit. With better lighting, he could now make out faded handwriting that appeared to say ER2 Coronation, 1953, Private Collection. The evidence was overwhelming. He had discovered one of the most significant missing artifacts in recent royal history. As he prepared to leave, James heard footsteps approaching in the corridor outside. Margaret was returning earlier than expected. He quickly repositioned the dresses to conceal the robe and moved toward the door, but he wasn't fast enough. Margaret entered the wardrobe room just as James was attempting to leave. "James?" Margaret said with surprise. "I thought you were conducting your security check later." "I was just doing a quick final sweep," James replied, hoping his nervousness didn't show. "Everything appears secure." Margaret's experienced eyes studied his face intently. Something in her expression suggested she knew more than she was letting on. "James," she said quietly, "sometimes the most important security is knowing when to keep certain discoveries confidential." James felt a chill run down his spine. Did Margaret know about the hidden robe? Had she been protecting this secret for years? The knowing look in her eyes suggested that his discovery might not have been as private as he had believed. The next morning arrived with unexpected drama. James was barely through the castle gates when he noticed unusual activity throughout the building. Staff members were whispering in small groups, and there was an electric tension in the air that suggested something significant had happened overnight. James found Margaret in the staff break room, looking unusually pale and worried. She motioned for him to sit beside her, away from the other staff members who were deep in animated conversation. "What's happening?" James asked quietly. Margaret leaned closer and whispered, "There's been a break-in attempt at the castle. Someone tried to access the royal chambers early this morning." James felt his blood run cold. "The royal chambers? Near Queen Camilla's wardrobe?" "Very close," Margaret confirmed. "Security cameras caught someone trying to pick the lock on a service entrance that leads directly to that wing of the castle. They didn't succeed in getting inside, but the timing is very suspicious." James's mind raced with possibilities. Could this break-in attempt be connected to the hidden coronation robe? Had someone discovered their secret? Or was this just an unfortunate coincidence? "Has anyone checked the wardrobe room?" James asked urgently. "Security did a basic sweep, but they found nothing obviously disturbed," Margaret replied. "However, they weren't looking for what we know is there." James realized they needed to check on the robe immediately, but they couldn't appear too eager without raising questions. "When can we get access to the room?" "Queen Camilla is at an official engagement this morning," Margaret said. "I'm supposed to be organizing her afternoon wardrobe selections. That would give us a legitimate reason to be in the room." An hour later, James accompanied Margaret to the wardrobe room under the pretense of conducting an additional security check following the attempted break-in. His heart pounded as Margaret unlocked the door and they stepped inside. Everything appeared normal at first glance. The contemporary dresses hung in their usual places, and nothing seemed obviously disturbed. But as they approached the hidden section, James noticed something that made his stomach drop. The dresses concealing the secret area had been moved slightly. Someone with a trained eye might not notice the difference, but James had memorized every detail during his previous visits. The arrangement was definitely different. Margaret saw it too. "Someone's been here," she whispered. They carefully moved the dresses aside to reveal the hidden section. The coronation robe was still there, but something was wrong. A small section of the fabric near the bottom hem had been cut away, leaving a gap in the intricate embroidery pattern. "They took a sample," Margaret said with horror in her voice. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for. James examined the cut more closely. It had been done carefully with a sharp blade, removing just enough fabric to identify the robe's authenticity, without destroying its overall appearance. This wasn't the work of a casual thief. This was someone with specific knowledge and expertise. "Who else could know about this robe?" James asked urgently. Margaret's face was ashen. "I don't know. The circle of people with this knowledge was supposed to be completely secure." As they stood there trying to process what had happened, James's radio crackled to life. "All security personnel report to the main briefing room immediately. Priority alert." James and Margaret exchanged worried glances. They quickly repositioned the dresses to conceal the robe and hurried toward the briefing room, where they found other security staff gathering with serious expressions. The head of Palace Security, Commander Richards, stood at the front of the room with a grim face. "Ladies and gentlemen, last night's break-in attempt was more sophisticated than initially reported. We have reason to believe that the intruder had inside knowledge of our security protocols." James felt a chill run down his spine. An inside job meant someone within the castle staff was involved in whatever was happening. Commander Richards continued, "We've discovered that the intruder was specifically targeting royal historical artifacts. Intelligence suggests they were working for international collectors who specialize in stolen royal memorabilia." The pieces were starting to come together in James's mind. Someone had learned about the hidden coronation robe and was attempting to steal it for wealthy private collectors. The attempted break-in had failed, but they had managed to obtain a sample of the fabric for authentication purposes. After the briefing, James caught up with Margaret in a quiet corridor. "We need to tell Commander Richards about the robe," he said urgently. Margaret nodded grimly. "You're right. This has gone beyond what we can handle ourselves, but we need to approach this carefully." They arranged to meet with Commander Richards privately that afternoon. James spent the intervening hours researching everything he could find about stolen royal artifacts and international art theft. The world of stolen historical items was vast and lucrative, with pieces often disappearing into private collections for decades. At 3 o'clock, James and Margaret sat across from Commander Richards in his office. The commander was a stern man in his 50s who had devoted his career to protecting the royal family. His expression grew increasingly serious as Margaret explained the 20-year secret of the hidden coronation robe. "You're telling me that Queen Elizabeth II's missing coronation robe has been hidden in Queen Camilla's wardrobe for 2 decades?" Commander Richards asked in disbelief. "Yes, sir," Margaret confirmed, "and someone took a fabric sample from it last night." Commander Richards was quiet for several long moments, processing this information. "Do you have any idea how this knowledge could have leaked?" "We've been trying to figure that out," James replied. The circle of people who knew was supposed to be very small. Commander Richards stood and began pacing behind his desk. "This changes everything about last night's break-in. If international thieves know about this robe, Queen Camilla and the entire royal family could be at risk." The gravity of the situation was becoming clear. They weren't just dealing with a hidden historical artifact anymore. They were dealing with a serious security threat that could endanger the royal family. "What do we do now?" Margaret asked. Commander Richards stopped pacing and looked directly at them. "First, we need to secure that robe immediately. Second, we need to inform Queen Camilla about what's been hidden in her wardrobe. And third, we need to find out who leaked this information before they try again." James felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier. His accidental discovery had uncovered not just a missing piece of royal history, but a serious security breach that threatened the safety of people he had sworn to protect. "There's something else," Commander Richards added ominously. "Intelligence reports suggest that whoever is behind this has detailed knowledge of our security procedures. This means someone we trust has betrayed that trust." As they left Commander Richards' office, James realized that their quiet secret had become a dangerous investigation. The beautiful coronation robe that had been safely hidden for 20 years was now at the center of an international conspiracy that could have far-reaching consequences for the royal family. Queen Camilla returned to the castle that evening, completely unaware of the dramatic events that had unfolded during her absence. Commander Richards had arranged for a private meeting in her study, with James and Margaret present as key witnesses to the extraordinary discovery. The Queen entered her study wearing an elegant blue dress, her demeanor calm and gracious as always. She took her seat behind the antique wooden desk that had served royals for generations, her eyes moving curiously between the 3 people gathered before her. "Commander Richards," she began with her characteristic warmth. "Margaret tells me you have something important to discuss regarding castle security." Commander Richards cleared his throat nervously. Even after years of serving the royal family, such conversations never became easier. "Your Majesty, what I'm about to tell you may come as quite a shock. It concerns a significant discovery made in your personal wardrobe room." Queen Camilla's eyebrows rose slightly, but she maintained her composed expression. "My wardrobe room? Whatever could be so important about my clothing collection?" James stepped forward, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "Your Majesty, while conducting a routine security check, I discovered something hidden behind your evening gowns. Something that has been concealed there for 20 years. Hidden? In my wardrobe?" Queen Camilla looked genuinely puzzled. "What sort of thing could be hidden there without my knowledge?" Margaret took a deep breath and spoke with the respect earned through decades of loyal service. "Your Majesty, it's Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe from 1953, the one that was reported missing 20 years ago." The color drained from Queen Camilla's face. She sat back in her chair, her usual composure momentarily shaken. "Elizabeth's coronation robe? But that's impossible. It was lost during a cleaning incident." Commander Richards leaned forward. "That was the official story, Your Majesty. The truth is that Queen Elizabeth II herself ordered it to be hidden after learning of a theft plot targeting the robe." Queen Camilla was silent for several long moments, her mind clearly processing this incredible revelation. "My mother-in-law hid her own coronation robe in what would eventually become my wardrobe room." "Yes, Your Majesty," Margaret confirmed. "She chose that location because it would be constantly protected by daily royal activities and trusted staff. She felt it was safer there than in any external vault." Queen Camilla stood and walked to the window overlooking the castle gardens. "All these years I've been getting dressed mere feet away from one of the most precious artifacts in royal history, and I never knew." Queen Elizabeth II wanted to protect you from the knowledge, Margaret explained gently. She felt that the fewer people who knew, the safer the robe would be. Queen Camilla turned back to face them, her expression now showing both amazement and concern. But if this has remained secret for 20 years, why are we discussing it now? Commander Richard's expression grew grave. Because someone else has discovered the secret, Your Majesty. Last night, there was an attempted break-in targeting the royal chambers. The intruder failed to gain access, but they managed to take a fabric sample from the robe. The implications hit Queen Camilla immediately. Someone is trying to steal Elizabeth's coronation robe. We believe so, Your Majesty. Intelligence suggests the involvement of international art thieves who specialize in royal memorabilia. The fabric sample was likely taken for authentication purposes. Queen Camilla returned to her chair, her royal training helping her maintain composure despite the shocking news. What steps are being taken to protect the robe and ensure this doesn't happen again? We need to move the robe to a more secure location immediately, Commander Richards replied. But first, we need to determine how this information leaked. Someone with inside knowledge provided details about the robe's location. The thought that someone within the castle staff had betrayed their trust was clearly distressing to Queen Camilla. She had always prided herself on the loyalty and dedication of the people who served the royal household. Do you have any suspects? She asked. We're conducting a thorough investigation, Commander Richards assured her, but it's a delicate process. We need to be careful not to alert the guilty party that we're aware of the security breach. James spoke up hesitantly. Your Majesty, there's something else you should know. When I first discovered the robe, I researched its history extensively. This isn't just any ceremonial garment. It's the actual robe Queen Elizabeth II wore during the most sacred moment of her coronation. Queen Camilla's eyes filled with emotion. The moment she became queen, Elizabeth cherished that ceremony and everything connected to it. She did indeed, Margaret added softly. She told me once that the coronation robe represented not just her own commitment to service, but the continuity of the monarchy itself. That's why she was so determined to protect it. Queen Camilla stood again and moved toward the door. I want to see it. I want to see Elizabeth's robe. Commander Richards looked concerned. Your Majesty, with respect, the wardrobe room may not be secure at this time. Then we'll make it secure, Queen Camilla replied with royal authority. I've lived my entire adult life surrounded by history and tradition, but I've never had the privilege of seeing something so intimately connected to Elizabeth's reign. If someone is trying to steal this precious artifact, I want to understand exactly what we're protecting. 20 minutes later, the group made their way to Queen Camilla's wardrobe room under heavy security escort. Additional guards had been posted throughout the corridor, and every entrance to the royal chambers was being monitored. Inside the wardrobe room, Margaret carefully moved aside the contemporary dresses to reveal the hidden section. Queen Camilla gasped when she saw the magnificent coronation robe for the first time. Oh my, she whispered, reaching out to touch the golden fabric. It's absolutely breathtaking. The robe seemed to glow in the wardrobe lighting, its intricate embroidery telling the story of centuries of royal tradition. Despite the small section that had been cut away, the garment remained one of the most beautiful and historically significant pieces in the royal collection. Elizabeth wore this on the most important day of her life, Queen Camilla said with reverence, and she trusted it to remain safe here, in this room where I dress every day. Commander Richards watched the Queen's emotional response to seeing the robe. Your Majesty, we need to make some immediate decisions about security protocols. Queen Camilla straightened, her mind now focused on practical matters. Yes, of course. First, this robe must be moved to the most secure vault we have available. Second, I want a complete investigation into how this information was compromised. And third, I want to know everything about these international thieves who think they can steal from the British royal family. As they left the wardrobe room, Queen Camilla turned to James. Thank you for your dedication to duty. Your accidental discovery may have prevented a terrible loss to our national heritage. James felt honored by the Queen's recognition, but he also understood that their challenges were far from over. Somewhere out there, criminals were planning another attempt to steal Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe, and they had inside help to make it happen. The investigation moved swiftly over the next 48 hours. Commander Richards worked with Scotland Yard's Art Crime Unit and international security agencies to track down the source of the leak. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe was carefully transported to the most secure vault beneath the castle, where it would remain safe while the investigation continued. James found himself at the center of the inquiry, his discovery having triggered a complex investigation that reached far beyond the castle walls. He was interviewed multiple times by various security agencies, each wanting to understand exactly how he had found the robe and what he had observed during his visits to the wardrobe room. On the third day after Queen Camilla's revelation, James was called to Commander Richard's office for an urgent meeting. When he arrived, he found the commander studying computer screens filled with surveillance footage and security reports. "James, we've made a significant breakthrough," Commander Richards announced without preamble. "The fabric sample taken from the coronation robe has surfaced in an authentication lab in Switzerland." James felt his pulse quicken. "They're trying to verify its authenticity?" "Exactly. Our international contacts intercepted communications between the thieves and a private collector in Monaco who specializes in stolen royal artifacts. The collector won't pay the asking price without proof that the item is genuine." Commander Richards turned his computer screen toward James, showing photographs of the fabric sample under microscopic examination. "The good news is that this confirms our suspicions about their plans. The bad news is that they're moving faster than we anticipated." "What does that mean for the investigation?" "It means we need to identify our inside source immediately, before they provide the thieves with updated information about the robe's new location." Commander Richards pulled up another screen, showing castle staff records. "We've narrowed down the list of potential suspects to 5 people who had access to historical records and could have discovered the robe's location." James studied the names on the screen, recognizing all of them as long-term castle employees. The thought that one of these trusted individuals had betrayed the royal family was deeply disturbing. "Have you found any evidence pointing to a specific person?" Commander Richards shook his head grimly. "Not yet. The leak was sophisticated enough to avoid leaving obvious digital traces. However, we have set up a trap." "A trap?" "We've deliberately leaked false information to each of the 5 suspects, telling them different fake locations where the robe is supposedly being moved. If any of this false information surfaces in the thieves' communications, we'll know who our traitor is." James was impressed by the cleverness of the strategy. "How long before we know if it worked?" "It shouldn't take long. The thieves are under pressure from their collector to move quickly, so they'll act on any new information within 24 hours. As if summoned by their conversation, Commander Richards's secure phone rang. He answered immediately, his expression growing more serious as he listened to the caller. "Understood. Thank you," he said before hanging up. He looked at James with a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. "We have our answer. The false information about the robe being moved to the Tower of London has just been intercepted in communications between the thieves and their Swiss contact." "Which means?" Commander Richards pulled up a staff photograph on his computer screen. James felt shocked when he saw the face. It was David Harrison, a senior archivist who had worked at the castle for over 15 years. James knew David personally and had always considered him completely trustworthy. David Harrison? James couldn't hide his disbelief. But he's been here for years. Why would he do this? Financial pressure, most likely. Our initial investigation shows that Harrison has significant gambling debts and has been struggling financially for months. The thieves probably approached him with an offer he felt he couldn't refuse. The revelation was deeply disappointing to James. David Harrison had always been friendly and helpful, someone who took pride in his knowledge of royal history. The idea that he had been willing to betray that trust for money was heartbreaking. What happens now? Now we spring the second part of our trap. Harrison doesn't know that we've identified him, so we're going to use that to our advantage. We want to catch the thieves in the act and break up their entire operation. Commander Richards explained the plan. They would feed Harrison additional false information about a supposed opportunity to access the coronation robe during a fabricated security system maintenance window. The thieves would likely see this as their best chance to steal the robe, not knowing that they would be walking into a carefully prepared trap. Will Harrison be arrested immediately? Not yet. We need him to maintain contact with the thieves until we can catch them all together. If we arrest Harrison now, the thieves might disappear and try again later with different inside help. James understood the logic, but the thought of allowing a traitor to continue working in the castle was deeply troubling. How can we be sure he won't cause additional damage? We're monitoring his every movement and communication. He won't be able to access any sensitive areas or information without our knowledge. In fact, he's being watched so closely that he's probably safer than most people in the castle right now. That evening, James attended a special security briefing where the plan to catch the thieves was explained to a select group of trusted guards. The operation would take place in 3 days, during what Harrison believed would be a genuine security maintenance window. The thieves would be allowed to enter the castle through a supposedly unguarded service entrance, following a route that Harrison had provided based on false information. Instead of finding the coronation robe, they would find themselves surrounded by armed police and security personnel. This is a dangerous operation, Commander Richards warned the assembled guards. These thieves are professionals who may be armed and desperate. Everyone needs to follow protocols exactly and be prepared for any situation. James felt both nervous and excited about participating in such a significant operation. His accidental discovery of the coronation robe had set in motion events that would hopefully result in the capture of international art thieves and the protection of priceless royal artifacts. As the briefing concluded, James reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that morning when he had noticed the wardrobe room door standing slightly ajar. What had begun as a routine security check had evolved into an international investigation involving Swiss authentication labs, Monaco collectors, and a sophisticated sting operation. The next 2 days passed slowly as everyone involved in the operation prepared for the confrontation with the thieves. James found himself constantly thinking about David Harrison, trying to understand how someone could betray the trust placed in them by the royal family. On the night before the planned sting operation, James lay awake thinking about Queen Elizabeth II and the extraordinary lengths she had gone to protect her coronation robe. Tomorrow they would discover whether those efforts had been successful, or whether the robe's 20-year period of safety was about to come to a dramatic end. The night of the sting operation arrived with an unusual quiet settling over Windsor Castle. James took his position in the shadows of the East Corridor, his heart beating steadily as he waited for the thieves to make their move. Around him, dozens of armed police officers and security personnel remained hidden, ready to spring into action at Commander Richards's signal. At exactly 11:30 p.m., the castle's motion sensors detected movement near the service entrance that David Harrison had identified as the thieves' entry point. Through his earpiece, James heard Commander Richards's calm voice, coordinating the operation. From the security control room, movement confirmed at entry point. Alpha. All units maintain positions until my signal. James watched through night vision equipment as 3 figures, dressed in black, approached the service door. They moved with professional confidence, using sophisticated lockpicking tools to bypass the security systems they believed had been disabled for maintenance. The lead thief was a tall, lean man who seemed to know exactly where he was going. Behind him followed 2 accomplices, one carrying a large duffel bag that presumably contained equipment for stealing the coronation robe, and another with what appeared to be electronic devices for detecting security systems. Subjects have entered the building, Commander Richards announced through the communication system. All units ready for deployment on my command. The thieves moved through the castle corridors following the route that Harrison had provided, completely unaware that every step was being monitored and recorded. James felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness knowing that Harrison was probably watching from his quarters, believing that his betrayal was about to pay off handsomely. As the thieves approached the area where they expected to find the coronation robe, James could see the anticipation in their movements. They had probably been planning this theft for months, studying the castle's layout and security procedures with Harrison's inside information. This is it, Commander Richards said quietly. All units execute now. Suddenly the castle corridors erupted with activity. Bright lights flooded the area where the thieves were walking, and armed police officers emerged from their hiding places with weapons drawn and voices shouting commands. Armed police. Get down on the ground immediately. The lead thief's reaction was swift and desperate. Instead of surrendering, he pulled out a pistol and began firing wildly while trying to retreat toward an alternative exit. His accomplices scattered in different directions, abandoning their equipment in panic. James heard gunshots echoing through the stone corridors and felt his training take over. He moved carefully toward his assigned position, helping to block one of the thieves' escape routes while staying in communication with the command center. Shots fired. All units exercise extreme caution. Commander Richards's voice carried urgent authority through the communication system. The chase that followed lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours to James. The castle's security systems had been designed to prevent exactly this type of intrusion, and the thieves found themselves trapped in a maze of corridors with no viable escape routes. One by one, the thieves were captured and restrained. The lead thief was found hiding in a storage room, his weapon empty and his confidence completely shattered. His accomplices were discovered trying to break through a window that had been reinforced specifically to prevent such escape attempts. All subjects secured, Commander Richards announced with clear relief in his voice. Excellent work, everyone. As the immediate danger passed, James felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The operation had been successful, and Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe remained safe. The thieves who had threatened this precious piece of royal history were now in custody, and their international network would be investigated and dismantled. But the night wasn't over yet. While the thieves were being processed by police, Commander Richards led a team to arrest David Harrison. James accompanied the group to Harrison's quarters, where they found the archivist packing a suitcase in obvious preparation for a quick departure. Harrison's face crumbled when he saw Commander Richards and the police officers at his door. All his financial problems and poor decisions had led to this moment of complete humiliation and disgrace. David Harrison, Commander Richards said formally, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit theft, betrayal of official trust, and endangering the security of the royal family." Harrison didn't resist as he was handcuffed and led away. James felt sorry for the man despite his betrayal. Financial desperation had driven him to make choices that would destroy his career and reputation forever. The following morning brought a mixture of celebration and reflection throughout the castle. The successful capture of the thieves was cause for satisfaction, but the discovery of betrayal within their own ranks served as a sobering reminder of the constant vigilance required to protect the royal family. Queen Camilla requested a private meeting with James, Margaret, and Commander Richards to discuss the resolution of the crisis. When they gathered in her study, she expressed her gratitude for everyone's dedication and professionalism during the investigation. "Because of your excellent work," Queen Camilla said, "Elizabeth's coronation robe is safe and a dangerous criminal network has been stopped. You have protected not just a precious artifact, but the memory and legacy of someone we all loved deeply." Commander Richards reported that the Swiss authentication lab had been raided and several additional suspects arrested. The Monaco collector who had been planning to purchase the stolen robe was also being investigated by international authorities. "What will happen to the coronation robe now?" James asked. Queen Camilla smiled warmly. "Elizabeth's robe will be properly displayed in the royal collection, where visitors from around the world can appreciate its beauty and historical significance. It has been hidden long enough." Margaret looked pleased by this decision. Queen Elizabeth II always believed that royal artifacts should serve their proper purpose of connecting people to history and tradition. She would be happy to know that her coronation robe will finally be seen and appreciated by the public. 3 months later, James attended the official unveiling of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation robe in a special exhibition at Windsor Castle. The magnificent golden garment was displayed in a climate-controlled case with detailed information about its history and significance. Visitors from around the world came to see the robe that had been lost for 20 years and recovered through a combination of accident, dedication, and professional investigation. The small section that had been cut away by the thieves had been expertly repaired by master craftspeople, restoring the robe to its original glory. As James stood watching families and history enthusiasts admiring the coronation robe, he reflected on the extraordinary series of events that had begun with his routine security check. His accidental discovery had led to the recovery of a priceless artifact, the capture of international criminals, and the preservation of an important piece of royal history. Margaret approached him as he stood contemplating the display. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, looking at the robe, with the same reverence she had shown during their secret visits to the wardrobe room. "It's incredible to think that something so precious was hidden right under everyone's noses for 20 years. James replied. Queen Elizabeth II was a wise woman, Margaret observed. She understood that sometimes the best way to protect something precious is to keep it close to the people who truly care about preserving it. James nodded, understanding that the robe's 20-year period of concealment had been more than just a security measure. It had been an act of faith in the dedication and loyalty of people like Margaret, who had cared for it as if it were her own family treasure. As visitors continued to stream past the coronation robe display, James felt proud to have played a role in bringing this magnificent piece of history back to its rightful place. Queen Elizabeth II's legacy would continue to inspire future generations, and her coronation robe would serve as a beautiful reminder of her extraordinary reign and dedication to service. The golden fabric seemed to capture the light streaming through the castle windows, creating the same magical glow that had first caught James's attention in the hidden corner of Queen Camilla's wardrobe. Now, instead of being a carefully guarded secret, it had become a symbol of the enduring power of royal tradition and the importance of protecting our shared cultural heritage.